let's say there is a small group of people that are in a position to be paid interest on essentially all the debt, the money created in the world. And this is a concentrated group of people that are in that position. And all of this debt-based money that has been they have created this essentially out of nothing, out of thin air. Is that essentially the situation we're in?
I think that's a pretty good summary of it. All the central banks of the world create the money of the world, and they do participate in every transaction. Every time somebody buys a package of bubble gum, there's a little bell that rings somewhere in the central bank cash register, and they get a little piece of the action. So yeah, they are in the middle of just about every productive exchange in the world that produces a service or a product, and that's a lot.
But this also the scale, just the scale of what they're receiving in interest payments on something that was created out of nothing,
yes,
would confer an incredible and awesome power on these people.
Well, it's when I was trying to figure out a way of describing that in the early days, I came up with the idea of imagine a river of gold flowing constantly in one direction. A river of gold so wide that you cannot even think across it, much less see across it.
Yes.
And then you're probably getting close to what we're talking about.
Yes.
Because it's global and it's cumulative and it's continuous, and not every transaction is a package of bubble gum. Many of those transactions are humongous purchases and construction projects and so forth that involve hundreds of millions or billions of dollars. And wars, of course, create the necessary destruction that require reconstruction, and that's very much a part of it. You add all of that together, and it is a river of gold. And it comes from the little man in little pieces, and it's aggregated, and the tributaries gather together into the central banks. And as you mentioned, those central banks are controlled by a relatively small number of people. Yeah. So it's further aggregated, and where it winds up, we can only imagine. But I think an important part of that understanding is that these people don't use that river of gold entirely for their own pleasures or aggrandizement or anything. They use most of it, they spend most of it in the acquisition of control and power over the world. They use that money. It's not just profit to them. To them, it's a business expense, so to speak, because the real goal is not just to make more money. They've got all the money they can possibly spend. Yes. The real goal today, I believe, is to control every human being on the planet. And that's where that river of gold is going.
So is it fair to say that the governments do not control this resource? It's the other way around.
Yes. It didn't start out that way, but that's always, you could predict that's the way it would be, because governments need money, and the only way they can get it is to tax their subjects, which is unpopular. And in today's world, governments must try very hard to be popular governments. Otherwise, they tend to be replaced by opposition forces that can pretend to be popular governments and benevolent governments. So they don't like the tax structure so much, but they love the fiat money structure, the devaluation of the purchasing power of the existing national currencies, because that's a hidden tax that goes directly to them, and not one person in 1,000 out there in the street understands how that works. So there's no animosity or anger on the public part, because they don't understand that they're being plundered. So it's their favorite method of paying for everything.
Yes.
And they have no limit.